Are you puzzled by the mixed messages on red and white meat, especially when it comes to managing diabetes? It's a common confusion that could impact your health choices. In this video, we'll dive into which meat is healthier for diabetics, helping you make informed decisions for a better lifestyle. Top 5 considerations when choosing between red and white meat for diabetics. Number 1, impact on blood glucose levels. All right, kicking things off with our first consideration, the impact on blood glucose levels. For anyone managing diabetes, it's absolutely vital to understand how different foods can affect your blood sugar. And what the research consistently tells us is that both processed meat and even unprocessed red meat are linked to higher fasting glucose levels. Now, this is a really big deal for diabetics because keeping blood glucose stable is the cornerstone of managing the condition and heading off any complications. It seems that the compounds created when meats are processed, or those that are naturally found in red meat, might play a role in insulin resistance or could impair how our bodies metabolize glucose. What's more, further studies have really underlined a steady connection between eating red meat and a higher chance of developing diabetes. And interestingly, this link seems to be even more pronounced for processed red meats. Think things like sausages, bacon, and those deli meats, when you compare them to unprocessed types, like beef or lamb. So, these findings really suggest that both the kind of red meat and how it's processed can greatly affect its impact on our metabolic health. This generally makes it a less ideal option if you're focused on keeping blood sugar in check. Now, on the flip side, when we look at white meat, like chicken and turkey, the current scientific evidence points to it having a generally neutral effect on how our blood glucose is regulated. So, if you eat white meat as part of a balanced diet and prepare it in healthy ways, it can be a really good source of lean protein. And the great part is, it doesn't seem to come with those same negative effects on glucose levels that we see with red meat. This makes it a potentially safer and often more beneficial choice for individuals with diabetes who are really working on their glycemic control. Number 2, diabetes risk factors. Moving on to our second point, diabetes risk factors. It's become quite clear that eating red meat, especially a lot of it, is a significant risk factor when it comes to developing type 2 diabetes. And we're not just talking about a small concern here. The evidence really shows a considerable increase in risk. Understanding these risk factors is so important for both preventing and managing diabetes, as it empowers people to make those proactive changes to their diet to protect their health. To give you an idea of the scale, a major analysis that looked at data from over 216,000 health participants came up with some pretty striking numbers. What this research found was that people who ate the most red meat had an incredible 62% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to those who ate the least. This really large study emphasizes that there's a kind of dose-response relationship here. The more red meat you eat, the greater your chances of developing diabetes. And the study went even deeper, looking at the difference between processed and unprocessed red meat. It found that for every extra daily serving of processed red meat, there was a 46% increased risk of type 2 diabetes. Now, the risk from unprocessed red meat was a bit lower, but still significant, with each additional daily serving linked to a 24% increased risk. This difference really shines a light on the fact that while all red meat comes with some risk, those processed versions are an even bigger threat to our metabolic health. Number 3, Nutritional composition comparison. Our third consideration is the nutritional composition comparison. When we stack red meat against white meat, their nutritional makeup gives us some really important clues about why they affect our health differently. Generally, red meat, that includes beef, pork, and lamb, tends to have higher levels of saturated fatty acids. And as you may know, these fats have long been linked with higher levels of LDL, or bad cholesterol, and they might also play a part in insulin resistance, which is a central problem in type 2 diabetes. On top of that, red meat is packed with heme iron. While iron is essential for us, too much heme iron from red meat has been connected to oxidative stress and inflammation, and these can potentially make diabetic complications worse. Now let's talk about white meat, mainly chicken and turkey. It usually has less fat overall, particularly if you go for lean cuts like breast meat and remember to take off the skin. White meat gives us high-quality lean protein, which is great for helping us feel full, maintaining our muscles, and it can definitely be part of a diet that's friendly to blood sugar levels. Because white meat has less saturated fat, it's generally a more heart-healthy choice compared to many red meat cuts. This is especially important for people with diabetes, as they already have a higher risk of heart disease. But, and this is a really important but, how you prepare your meat can make a huge difference to its nutritional value. For example, if you fry a chicken thigh with the skin still on, it's going to have a much different and much less healthy fat and calorie count than a grilled, skinless chicken breast. In the same way, a lean piece of beef with the visible fat trimmed off and then grilled is a much better option than a fatty, processed sausage. We'll delve a bit more into these key nutritional differences, looking at different cuts and common ways of preparing both red and white meats, all to help you make the best and most informed choices for your health. Number 4, protein alternatives and substitution benefits. Next up, we have protein alternatives and the benefits of making substitutions. And here's some really good news for anyone thinking about cutting back on red meat. Research shows there are significant health benefits when you swap it out for other protein sources. Making these kinds of changes can be a really powerful way to manage diabetes risk and boost your overall health. The main idea is to bring in a variety of different proteins that help support your metabolic well-being. Studies have actually shown some pretty amazing results when red meat is exchanged for plant-based proteins. For instance, just by replacing one daily serving of red meat with nuts and legumes, think almonds, walnuts, lentils, or chickpeas, was linked to an impressive 30% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. These plant-based foods are packed with fiber, healthy fats, and important micronutrients, all of which help with better glycemic control and contribute to good health overall. And dairy products offer another good alternative. The same research discovered that if you swap one daily serving of red meat for a serving of dairy, like yogurt or milk, it was connected to a 22% lower risk of type 2 diabetes. Dairy gives us calcium, vitamin D, and high-quality protein. We'll explore more practical protein alternatives, looking at options like fish, eggs, tofu, and quinoa. We'll also give you some real, actionable advice on how to make these dietary changes smoothly, making sure you still get enough protein for your body's needs, so the shift is both healthy and something you can stick with. Number 5, portion size and frequency recommendations. And finally, let's talk about portion size and frequency recommendations. When we're discussing meat consumption, particularly for those with diabetes, Moderation is absolutely key. Health experts usually recommend limiting how much red meat you eat to protect your metabolic health. To be specific, for the best health and well-being, a common piece of advice is to try and limit red meat to about 1 serving per week. Sticking to this can really lower the risks that come with eating a lot of red meat. It's also really important to understand what an appropriate portion size looks like. A standard serving of cooked meat is usually about 3 ounces, or around 85 grams. That's roughly the size of a deck of cards. And this applies to both red and white meat. Paying attention to portion sizes helps you avoid taking in too many calories, too much saturated fat, and other things that can negatively impact your blood glucose levels and your overall health. We'll give you some more specific ideas for portion sizes of different meats to help you picture and use these guidelines in your everyday meals. Good meal planning is really essential if you want to include the right amounts of animal proteins while still keeping blood glucose management as your top priority. This means making smart choices about leaner protein sources, balancing them out with lots of non-starchy vegetables and whole grains, and mixing up your protein choices during the week. We'll look into some meal planning strategies that can help you manage portions, pick healthier ways to cook, and make sure your diet is supporting stable blood sugar levels and giving you all the nutrients you need for a healthy diabetic lifestyle. Additional considerations for diabetic meat consumption. Now, moving beyond just the basic difference between red and white meat, there are several other things that really influence how meat affects the health of someone with diabetes. Take cooking methods, for example. They play a huge role. If you fry meats, especially with extra fats or breading, you can dramatically increase their calorie and unhealthy fat content. This could potentially lead to blood sugar spikes and weight gain. It's much better to go for healthier cooking techniques like grilling, baking, broiling, poaching, or stir-frying with just a little oil, as these methods help keep the nutritional value of the meat without piling on extra fats. Also, how much processing a meat has gone through really impacts its health effects. Those processed meats we mentioned, like sausages, hot dogs, bacon, and deli meats, often have high levels of sodium, nitrates, nitrites, and unhealthy fats. These additives and the way they're processed have been strongly connected to higher risks of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and even some cancers. A much healthier way to go is to choose fresh, unprocessed cuts of meat and then season them yourself at home with herbs and spices. And another thing to think about is what you eat alongside your meat, as this can change the overall glycemic response of your meal. If you pair meat with high-fiber foods, like non-starchy vegetables such as broccoli, spinach, and peppers, or whole grains like quinoa or brown rice, this can help slow down how quickly glucose is absorbed and lead to better blood sugar control. On the other hand, if you eat meat with refined carbohydrates or sugary sauces, you could undo the benefits of an otherwise healthy protein. We'll also touch on some practical cooking tips, like trimming off any visible fat before you cook, marinating meats in natural things like citrus juice and herbs, and making sure to include plenty of vegetables in your meat-based dishes, all to help you prepare meals that are friendly for diabetics. Individual variations in response. It's really becoming more and more clear that there's no single dietary approach that works for everyone, particularly when we're dealing with chronic conditions like diabetes. Our genetic makeup can actually play a big part in how our bodies metabolize different foods, and that includes various types of meat. For instance, some people might be more sensitive to the saturated fat in red meat, while others might process the heme iron in it differently. This can lead to different levels of oxidative stress or inflammation from person to person. There's a fascinating field called nutrigenomics, which looks at how our nutrition and our genes interact, and it's starting to give us more insight into these individual differences. New research is looking into specific ways our genes and diet interact, which could help explain why some people have more negative effects from eating red meat, or on the flip side, why some might be able to tolerate it better than others. This research is still pretty new, but it does suggest a future where dietary advice could be much more personalized, tailored to an individual's specific genetic profile. Understanding these potential individual differences really highlights just how important personalized nutrition is. While the general advice, like limiting red meat and opting for lean white meat, is helpful for most people with diabetes, some individuals might need more specific guidance. It's a good idea to monitor how your own body responds to different foods, keep an eye on your blood glucose levels, and work closely with your healthcare providers or registered dietitians. They can help you create a dietary plan that's best suited to your unique body and helps you manage your diabetes optimally. So, to wrap things up, while white meat generally seems to be a better option for individuals with diabetes when compared to red meat, it's really important to keep in mind that everyone's dietary needs and how they respond to food can be different. The evidence we have strongly points towards limiting how much red meat you eat, and instead, bringing in a wide variety of other protein sources. This approach can lead to better blood glucose management and improved health in the long run. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Have you made any changes to how much or what kind of meat you eat after being diagnosed with diabetes? Please share your experiences and any helpful tips you might have in the comments section. And remember, for nutrition advice that's personalized just for you and your specific needs, it's always best to talk to a registered dietitian who specializes in diabetes care. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter to get the latest research and insights on diabetic nutrition.